mother of pearl plastic like we put on toilet seats and for decoration. The light inside seemed to come from everywhere. The instrument panel wasn't like anything I'd ever seen before, and all of my years since 1927 in the air game. And they had a compartment in the wall which both cleans and deodorizes their clothes by some light process, which required no water, soap, or detergents, or a washing machine.
Giant Rock, for the last 10 years, has been the Plymouth Rock of the saucer age. Saucer conventions were meeting here as far back as the pre-astronaut era of black and white television. But the contactees' storyline was the same, then as now.
Howard, would you tell us in your own words about your trip to Venus, how it started?
Well, as I say, it started first with a very decided tingling all over my body. This tingling finally extended to the mind area, and there was a clarification of mind, such as it's hard to believe. I seem to become one with the entire universe.
In the Valhalla of interplanetary contactees, the late George Adamski is regarded by his followers as something of a Christopher Columbus among outer space voyagers.
And you talked to him, you asked him?
I have, more or less on gestures and mental telepathy, as it is known, talk transfer.
He does not speak. I mean,
he didn't at the time, but I have met him since, and he does speak very well English as well as any other language.
George Adamski was successful in attracting many disciples with film like this. He called it a spaceship from Venus. His critics call it a crude hoax. This film was obtained from one of Adamski's disciples, Mrs. Madeline Rotifer, who has made her own UFO film and who credits Adamski with an assist in her first contact with Venusians.
Some of them have even been to our home. And the day that the one came into the yard, which I filmed on the camera, there were 3 inside the ship.
Major Kehoe and his NICAP organization have little regard for the likes of contactees, Rotifer and Adamski. They lean heavily on the testimony of professionals.
According to the United States Air Force, in following a policy which is set probably fairly high in the Pentagon, there are about 250 or 300 extremely incompetent airline and military pilots in this country. They're carrying passengers. They fly across the oceans, and they seem to be quite safe. The airlines let them continue to fly, even though they have reported UFOs. Now, this is not an attack on the Air Force spokesman or the project spokesman. They are simply following orders to explain away all UFO sightings as quickly as possible when they become public and deny that UFOs really exist.
The official Air Force reply has long been that there is no cover-up and there are no flying saucers from outer space. The Air Force position was detailed in this book by Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Tacker, who for many years was connected with the UFO project.
We're kind of in the position of the man who's asked, have you stopped beating your wife? This has been going on for 19 years. The charges are absolutely untrue. You could characterize them as being senseless and vicious. Our critics continually charge that the United States Air Force is withholding information from the general public on this subject. This is absolutely untrue. We are not hiding anything. We have nothing to hide. There is nothing in Air Force files, in either the classified files or the unclassified files, that come to a conclusion that spaceships have visited the Earth.
The Air Force Investigative Unit is known as Project Blue Book. UFO reports, hoax or serious sightings, wind up here at Wright-Patterson Airfield in Dayton, Ohio. It has studied over 10,000 UFO sightings and found explanations for most of them. But about 650 remain unidentified. Not enough information to explain them. The hoaxes, however, are easy to explain. A rocket nose cone turns out to be a magnesium anode used by water companies to protect their pipes. A rock from outer space, actually fused by a high-tension line which shorted out. The finders said this was food from outer space. The Food and Drug Administration analyzed it as old-fashioned buckwheat cakes. Hoaxes are easy to discount, but the Air Force insists it treats serious reports seriously. Chief scientific consultant of Project Blue Book is Professor J. Allen Hynek, head of the Dearborn Observatory at Northwestern University. He took on the assignment 18 years ago. He talked with Joseph Wershba of CBS Reports.
Is it in the realm of possibility that there are spaceships someplace in this universe?
Well, if you put it in the word, use the word possibility and not probability, then I would have to say, I think as any scientist would have to say, it is certainly possible, yes. But I think we must always distinguish between the two terms possible and probable. A thing may be scientifically possible, but the probability of its occurring may be extremely small, you see. To this time, there is no proof that I would consider valid scientific proof that we have been visited by spaceships. I would say the great majority are balloons, meteors, satellites, aircraft seen with the sun glinting off of them, and birds. And then you get into a host of minor things. But in general, you can say that the IFOs, the identified ones, have turned out to be generally quite usual things seen under unusual circumstances or surprising circumstances. It's a global thing. What it is, please don't ask me. I'm still puzzled. You might call me a study in puzzlement. But that among the tremendous noise or static or crud or whatever you want to call it of tremendous number of unreliable reports that are easily explained, there is this residue of most interesting cases that intrigue me in the same way that a good mystery story intrigues me, and I'd like to get the solution. I don't think it is space people, although I would be delighted if it turned out that way, because as an astronomer, I think it would make astronomy even more interesting than it is. And as far as the Air Force is concerned, I can't speak for them, of course, but I should imagine that if the existence of spacecraft were really established, it would really increase the appropriations of the Air Force.
But how do you answer the people who are pretty competent, careful, cautious, probing people, pilots, radar trackers?
Those are particularly the people that I like to talk to, because they understand what angular rates are, they understand scientific terminology. I can ask them, what was the altitude and azimuth when you first saw it? What was its azimuth and altitude when it disappeared? What was its angular acceleration? They can give you an intelligent answer to a thing like that.
What is your answer to the people who are sure there are spaceships and they say that you and the Air Force are in cahoots?
Well, first of all, this business about being in cahoots is just simply a downright falsehood. And if they insist that space vehicles exist, I say, oh, fine, the burden of proof is on you.
How thin is the dividing line between science and science fiction? What do we know of outer space? Is there anyone out there? And are they headed our way? That part of the story in a moment.
Let's try a speed of, say, 10 knots and a rudder angle of 27 degrees and check on that tactical diameter.
These Navy men are asking a machine to solve a most intricate problem.
Go. Magic finger.
Find the red, green, and violet stress stimulus.
At the same time, miles away, these chemists are asking it to work on their problem.
All right, your red value is 48.09.
Is that center line?
At the same time, somewhere else, the same thing. They're all sharing a powerful IBM computer. 50 companies can now use one computer at one time, and all 50 get their answers immediately. This is time sharing. You don't need to own the computer or go where it is or be an experienced computer user. Just rent one of these, and you're in command of a distant computer. Suppose you're blending a new lipstick. Calculating color quantities can take hours. But now?
Oh, you got it. 1898.66.
Very good.
Or you want to know how large a rudder is needed to maneuver a ship before building it. Analyzing the data collected from this Navy scale model takes days to do by hand. But now you can swing around, type in the data, and have the answer back in seconds. Your question goes out over ordinary telephone line into the central computer, along with the questions of anyone else who has a problem at that very moment. The computer is so incredibly fast that answers are flashed back almost before the fingers leave the keys. With this time-sharing system, an IBM computer is now available to anyone, anywhere.
CBS Reports, UFO, Friend, Foe, or Fantasy, continues with Walter Cronkite.
Much of science, when we look at it close up, looks like fiction. Those who charge a conspiracy as being carried on by scientists and the military to cover up visitations from outer space use that charge to explain why no UFOs have been reported by our space defense system. Well, this is a dangerous game, like yelling fire in a crowded theater. For in this hydrogen bomb and missile age, the Air Force has the job of turning the unidentified into identified objects in a matter of moments. There's no time for theory and conjecture, because any unidentified object would sound warning klaxons around the world. Thousands of people would have to know about it instantly. It's literally true that what we don't know could kill us. CBS News correspondent Bill Stout reports from Colorado Springs.
This is where they watch everything that flies over or close to North America. The Combat Operations Center for NORAD, the North American Air Defense Command. Thousands of items of information pour in here from radar stations, outposts, ships, and aircraft scattered all across the hemisphere. Data that's sorted and displayed on this screen. All routine flights, commercial and private, are filtered out. Those of special interest to air defense are shown as arrows. Yellow is the Strategic Air Command. Green is for special interest flights, such as President Johnson's plane. Orange is unknown. After they're identified, that color is changed. Red is hostile, a color used so far only in practice. All this and much more goes into the decisions that are made right here in this room. A 24-hour watch kept by men of the Air Force, Army, Navy, and Canada. They see everything that's in the sky. They have to. And one of them is Captain Gary Reese, an Air Force radar officer with the Air Defense Command. Is that right, Captain? You see everything that's up there?
Yes, that's right, Bill. With the characteristics of our present radar system, any object which has reflective surfaces and which stays within our radar coverage, which is virtually every square foot of the United States, will be painted on our radar screens.
But how good are you, Captain? How large an object can you see?
If it is reflective, and let's say larger than a watermelon as a crude example, and within our radar coverage, we should paint it.
You talk about the reflective properties of an object in the sky. Is it possible, Captain, that there are things up there made of material your radar will not pick up?
So far as we know, all flying objects are composed of materials which are aerodynamic and which do have a reflective surface upon which radar waves can be bounced. It's possible that there are other types of material, however, I doubt it.
Has there ever been a report of a flying saucer, Captain, that was translated into hard information right here? A plot on the board in this room?
I don't think so, Bill, for the reason that these sightings have never been substantiated and could not be translated into hard radar return figures.
There have been sightings then, but they turned out to be other things, airplanes or balloons.
But never a saucer.
You see everything up to roughly 100,000 feet?
Yes, that's right, up to approximately 100,000 feet, at which point the space tracking network takes over.
The Space Tracking Network, also in Colorado Springs, is charged with tracking and logging every object that moves in space around the Earth, from 100,000 feet to 2,000 miles. Bill Stout asked Major Albert Morse just how good the surveillance is.
As an example of some of our precision, we have here a photo of an object re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Through our programs, we were able to predict a precise time that this was going to happen and notified a particular agency who then went out with a camera and was able to obtain this photograph.
What altitude?
This is just entering the Earth's atmosphere somewhere around 400,000 feet.
In keeping track on this board, you follow not only ours, but Russian, Canadian, French?
Yes, sir. Everything that has been launched so far.
Could there be